to the next in our training series on the A-18 Hornet. I'm just learning, so I'm no expert, but today we're going to try, and I emphasize the word try, a Case 1 carrier landing. We will have the aid of the tutorial, but frankly, the amount of control required to land on a carrier is very extreme, and I don't really have the skills necessary yet in this aircraft to feel like I can do it successfully. So we'll do our best. I think we'll probably end up touching the carrier, but I don't know that we'll actually catch anything. But for now, let's hop into it, because this tutorial takes quite a long time with the guy talking. And then I'll probably try to do I'll do a live stream where I just try to practice takeoffs and landings from the carrier to see if I can get better at it. And then you can watch me slowly get better at it, hopefully. We'll see.
Today we will perform a Case 1, Case 2 carrier landing. This will be very similar to the VF.
Let me adjust I'm trying to figure out the right volume settings for things, because I remember in the last episode it was pretty loud and you couldn't hear me at the end once the engines were spooled up.
Our field overhead pattern. In fact, Navy pilots land at airfields much like they do on the boat to maintain this perishable skill. In regard to a Case 2 landing, this would be the visual approach element of the landing after being guided in from the Marshall Stack CV-1 approach. Case 1 is defined as having a 3,000-foot minimum cloud ceiling.
You know what it is? I think I need to keep the volume up and just make sure that the cockpit noise is turned down.
5 nautical miles of visibility. For today's lesson, though, we are going to keep the aircraft carrier stationary, so we can provide some gates that will assist you in the pattern. Press spacebar to continue.
Okay, let me try. Let me adjust one more thing with the volume. Is there a communications volume option? Slider controls the volume of sounds normally pass to the ear. Oh yeah, I wanted to reduce the volume of the radio calls, because that was very loud, but that's also going to reduce the volume of the guy talking, so live with it.
Ahead of you is a series of gates that you will fly through. These are designed to instruct you on where you should be during the pattern. You will start the pattern at 800 feet and 350 knots just starboard of the boat. During this phase of the landing, lower your arrestor hook by moving the arrestor hook handle in the down position. First, starting out, we will not break into the pattern until 1.5 nautical miles past the bow of the boat. This will give you plenty of time to get on speed in the downwind leg. At the break, you will make a level turn with the G of 1% of your airspeed. In this case, 3.5 G for 350 knots. As your speed decreases, relax the G to match the speed. You may need to relax or tighten the turn to roll out 1.3 to 1.4 mile abeam the boat. At 180 degrees of turn, level out on the downwind leg and descend to 600 feet. You should be below 250 knots. Once below 250 knots, lower your landing gear and set the flaps to full. Press spacebar to continue.
Okay, so the things I need to remember for this are I need to remain at 800 feet all the way through the turn, and then we can start descending and lower our gear and set the flaps to full. So the first thing I'm going to do right now is I'm going to lower the hook, because I'm not going to... It's difficult to do these things. It's difficult to do these things while you're flying, and having to switch over the mouse and you're trying to hold the stick and all that other stuff. So the idea is we're going to get to 800 feet. We're going to stay at 800 feet past the carrier, hold 800 feet in a 180 degree turn, which we are in between 350 and 360, so it's going to be 170, 180. And that's it for that. So he's probably going to... The problem with these tutorials is that they make you sit through a bunch of text and then they go back through it again, so that's what makes it take so long. You can't skip to the, all right, let's practice it now. So I really wish they had changed it to that.
Once on the downwind leg, establish yourself at 600 feet and slow the aircraft to an on-speed angle of attack of 8.1 degrees. This can most easily be seen on the HUD by keeping the velocity indicator inside the E bracket. To the left of the HUD frame are the angle of attack indexer lights. When on speed, the center donut should be lit. Use of pitch trim is very important to set on-speed AOA. Maintain on-speed angle of attack during the downwind leg.
And you can't skip it either, because if you press a space bar, it still plays the entire thing and then just automatically moves on. So I'm not a fan of this.
Once your left wingtip is 5 seconds past the stern, begin a 30-degree bank to the left while keeping your velocity vector just below the horizon line on the HUD. This will place us in a steady rate of turn to the boat while descending. If the boat is moving with 25 to 30 knots of wind over the deck, start your turn when abeam the white of the round down on the stern of the boat. Your descent rate should be 100 to 200 feet per minute, as indicated on the HUD above the altitude box. 90 degrees through this turn, your altitude should be 500 feet. Past 90 degrees of turn, your descent rate should increase to 500 feet per minute. Only use your instruments for the first 90 degrees of turn. Don't peak. Use your throttle to control your rate of turn and pitch trim to control your airspeed. Press spacebar to continue.
Okay.
As you roll out on the landing course line, acquire the improved Fresnel Lens Optical Landing System, or IFLOLS, and match your glide slope such that the center light stays centered between the two green lines. If the light moves above center, you are too high and need to reduce throttle. If the light is below center, you are too low and risk a ramp strike unless you increase power. You will fly to maintain on-speed AOA while keeping the ball centered. Prior to touchdown, do not flare the aircraft, but rather let it fly onto the boat at ideally 750 feet per minute, as indicated above your altitude on the HUD. Press spacebar to continue. Before we give this a whirl, let's first set up the landing course line. Using what you learned in the TACAN lesson, set the TACAN to 74 X-ray and the carrier BRC of 350 degrees. This is the TACAN channel for the carrier, and it will provide us useful information to line up our downwind and final approach legs of the pattern. Set your HUD to show the radar altitude.
Okay, I was going to just go ahead and do that, but I always hate it when people just skip through things without explaining, because you might not have watched the radio navigation video tutorial that I did. So first you got to get to the support page, then the HSI, then we press TACAN over here on the I forget what this is called, but it's the information panel. And we're trying to go to 74X. So 74, enter, turn it on, and then slave this. Okay, yeah, so we slave this to the thing, to the TACAN, and then they want us to do 350 degrees for the course.
To give us final notice when we should be passing over the wake of the boat when in the final turn, set the radar altimeter by your right knee to 370 feet by spinning the knob counterclockwise. Finally, set your left DDI to the HUD and your right DDI to the FCS page. Press spacebar to unpause.
Okay, I think that's 370 feet. Yeah, radar altitude times 100 feet, so it's 100, 200, 300, and around 370. Set your left DDI and HUD to the HUD. Well, why would... Oh, because we needed the page to set it, but now we want it to be the HUD, and we want the right DDI to the FCS page. Not sure why, but... So the FCS page can be found on the support screen with the FCS button right there.
We are now flying a heading of 352 degrees and 349 knots and 1,900 feet. Fly through the gates ahead, which will place us at 800 feet and offset to the right of the boat. We don't want to directly overfly the boat, so we can first check to see if the deck is foul. Maintain an airspeed of 350 knots. Anytime you approach the carrier with the intent to land, you should do a hail R check, meaning check that the hook is down and engine anti-ice heat if required, anti-skid switch is off, ILS is boxed on the HSI when ICLS is being used, external lights are set for daytime, and rad out set to the HUD. Cage the velocity vector on the HUD by pressing the cage uncage button on the throttle or press C. Lower the arrestor hook by clicking on the lever or pressing H.
I might be able to remember that, but you still have to visually verify, so you need to figure
When
out
at
a good way of doing that.
1.5 miles from the bow, set the throttles to idle and follow the gates for a 180-degree turn into the downwind leg. The rate of turn will be based on a G that is 1% of our airspeed, in this case 3.5 G for 350 knots.
We have a problem. The aircraft turned. The aircraft carrier turned. It is no longer aligned with where it's supposed to be. That's a problem. I need to keep the... way too fast. But it doesn't really matter because the aircraft carrier is not pointed where it's supposed to be pointed based on where these things are. So I think this lesson is going... I'm gonna have to skip this lesson because if that's what's gonna happen, not much I can do. I'll make a try. Way too high. I'm supposed to be down at like 600 feet by now. Low. At least we're sort of on with the aircraft carrier. Nowhere close to where it's supposed to be, but not much I can do about it when the tutorial moves the freaking aircraft carrier. Well, I landed. It was not a proper landing, but what can you do? It was supposed to stay on course for 350, and it did not. So, whatever. We will, yeah, we'll go ahead and pick up the hook. Do some nose wheel steering to get out of the way. We will pick up our wings. I didn't pick up the wings. Not sure why it's not picking up the wings. There it goes. And, yeah, I'm not sure why it did that, but I'm not going to waste time trying to do that again. The tutorial is clearly broken, and that doesn't help me. So, sorry if that didn't go the way you thought it was going to go. It certainly didn't go the way I thought it was going to go, but it is what it is, and, yeah, so I think what I'll probably do is just try to practice doing carrier landings. I'll look up a video on the proper procedure and find something that allows me to practice it. So thanks for joining me for today, guys. At least we got kind of some of it done, and we did land on the carrier and catch the wire. Not properly. Probably damaged the plane by doing it that way, but whatever. Let's go ahead and move on to the next, we'll move on to the next training session, which should start getting into like weapon systems and things like that. So thank you for joining me today. Hope you're having fun, and see you next time.